Jumping into the Legendary servers last October after over a decade away from the game was like getting pile-driven into Middle-earth by a Nazgul. I want you to learn from my mistakes so that you can have more fun, make more gold, play the way you want, and waste less of your time in the process as you get started in your journey through Middle-earth and into Angmar here in LOTRO. I hit inventory management purgatory, extreme moments of panic and existential crisis, learned about landscape difficulty and wraiths the hard way, relearned the entire crafting system, and had a second existential crisis when I remembered virtues and how critical they are, all of that before level 50. After getting out of the tutorial and into the town of Archet, I immediately hunted down the Hardened Traveler to increase the difficulty of everything I fought in the overworld so that it would be more interesting for me. But that had a lot more consequences than I was expecting. So let's break that down so you know what you're getting into. You see, the difficulty scales from 0, which is the default game, all the way up to 9, which is heroic +2. The higher levels are meant for groups. Do not try to be that guy. I learned that lesson for you when I took my retail guardian and I tried it out and got absolutely mangled in about 5 seconds. Yes, he was also a human named Dagthirl. Don't worry about it. But while you don't want to go too high, I found that 3 was a good place to challenge myself and be reasonable. You're going to be doing about half the damage while taking twice as much damage, but you do benefit from increased experience and virtue experience gained in the process. But the biggest thing for you to know about this difficulty is the Enraged effects and the Eye of Sauron effects that start at this level. The Eye of Sauron is some orbital defense satellite that he just set up at the end of the Second Age, apparently, and he can just lock in on you whenever he feels like it and just beam hellfire straight down onto you for a bunch of damage. But unfortunately for me, that was not all. See, I was smacking boars and wolves and they just wouldn't go down, and it took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize that at this difficulty, enemies can become enraged when you fight them, which drastically increases their survivability, speed, or strength in combat. But the great news is you can remove these. The bad news is you need an ability that removes corruption from an enemy, and unless you're a Mariner, you're out of luck until level 20. Mariners get one at 14 with Salt Cure. I guess they're just cooler than the rest of us, but whatever. But once you do get this corruption removal, these buffs basically mean nothing because it's so easy to remove them. Now, this selection is not at all a permanent choice. You can turn it on and off whenever you'd like, but there are deeds for playing from below level 11 all the way up to 50 or even 130 without ever choosing a difficulty below Fearless. So if you're set on getting that, get ready for the long haul. But there's more to talk about the reality of this difficulty mode, as well as some great advice here in a little bit once I get you some more context for that. But in order to do that, we need to talk about crafting and ring wraiths. I was determined to make it to level 20 without dying to get the Undying title, just because I could. I was able to forge on and get my human guardian Dagthirl through Archet into the next town over, Combe. Yes, I do have 3 human guardians named Dagthirl, each on different servers. And yes, the first time I played D&D as a kid, I did in fact create a male human fighter. How did you guess? But that's besides the point. It was here I was able to pick up my crafting vocations, which have gotten a fresh update since I last played. They used to group these into one specific vocation you picked that gave you 3 different crafting professions. But now you just get to pick whatever professions you like when you get to your starting region's second quest hub, whether that be Combe, Gondaman, or wherever, which I like a lot more than the old system locking you into presets. I won't go too deep into crafting professions in this video, but you level up your professions by using them up until you fill the XP bar up in the crafting menu once. At that point, you'll unlock the next tier, but can also keep crafting at the current one to master it. Mastery allows you to crit your crafting, which can produce extra or higher quality items, and it gives you a title. There's quite a lot more to crafting, but that's enough to at least get you going. But what should you choose? For your first character, here's what I would recommend. Take Prospector, Forester, and Scholar. as those three are the gathering focused professions. This will allow you to do one of two things. Either one, harvest as much as you can and sell it all off at the auction house to build a nice little nest egg of gold for your future endeavors in Middle-earth. Or two, establish a strong base of materials as you adventure through Middle-earth for the first time to power level alt crafting on alt characters. Now, stockpiling materials for future crafting is amazing, especially if you're a loot goblin like I am. But you are going to run out of bag space pretty quickly, especially once you get past level 20 and start getting into the higher tiers of crafting materials. I do have a great solution to this for you, which is especially perfect if you're newer to the game and can't decide on what class you want to play without actually trying some out. But that's not the only way to go. It's also perfectly fine to choose professions tied directly to your class. In my case, I chose prospecting, armorsmithing, and weaponsmithing on my guardian here because I wanted Dagthirl to be as mayonnaise as possible of a character. I don't feel the weaponsmithing professions are nearly as necessary since Mines of Moria came out, since legendary weapons so wildly outshine normal ones, though I don't know how they stack up on the retail servers at level cap currently. I'm still working my way up there. But then, while I was out minding my own business in the woods, using my brand new pickaxe to mine some ore and respectfully removing some nasty bandits from the local perimeter, and all of a sudden my first Wraith spawned in. But as terrifying as it was, I did the only thing a noble guardian such as myself could. I ran faster than the brawler next to me, and if I could have tripped him, I would have. These Wraiths are downright deadly on higher landscape difficulties, especially without any corruption removals to peel their buffs off. Now, the Wraiths are cool, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with hightailing it out of there when they spawn in, whether you're on a higher difficulty or not. Even as an experienced, though admittedly rusty, guardian, I really couldn't consistently solo these guys until like level 30 plus. And even then, it was pretty neck and neck using healing potions and all of my cooldowns. I enjoyed that challenge, but they can definitely be a buzzkill. So if it doesn't sound like a fun thing, then I absolutely do not recommend enhanced difficulty on the legendary servers. You may even want to skip the legendary servers altogether. I dealt with them crashing solo instances, spawning in and demolishing me, killing 15 minutes of progress through Goblin Town in the Misty Mountains. Oh, that's a whole story into itself, and plenty other headaches. But on the other hand, once you get to within 5 levels of the level cap, you can even fight the legendary ring wraiths when they spawn in alongside tons of other players from your server. And I still think that's really cool and fun to try to hunt down where they spawned and take them down before the time runs out. But finally, after tons of running away from wraiths and overpulls, getting deep and reading all my quest texts, some more running, and a boatload of close calls on losing my Undying title, I finally managed to ding to level 20. Okay, I mean, I did have to sacrifice Bob's daughter Lalia here to a Wraith, but really it's her own fault. She's walking so slowly. The game massively opened up for me here. Instead of playing it safe with sword and board, I swapped over to Redline Guardian for more damage output to clear quests faster, grabbed a two-hander, and on top of all that, improved Sting at level 20 finally let me pull those awful buffs off of the landscape mobs, making combat much more predictable. The Wraiths still beat me. I had been having fun so far, but this was like a breath of fresh air. From level 6 all the way up to 20 took me a day and a half. But once I finally hit 20, things felt like they actually started moving for me. And this right here is that extra bit I wanted to highlight about landscape difficulty. It can be really rewarding, but for your first character especially, it could feel like it grinds the game down to a halt. It considerably slows your progress, taking longer to kill things. You're more likely to die if you pull multiple enemies accidentally. And remember the gathering professions we talked about earlier? A lot of times, especially for Scholar, you'll end up having to deal with enemies near them. So if you want to do a lot of gathering, it's going to feel even worse sometimes. But if you're still determined to grit your teeth, I've got actionable advice for you. First, hoard your potions and your food, especially if you're playing a non-healing class such as Guardian. There are food items like rations in the game that speed up your out of combat or sometimes even in combat morale regen. Potions are pretty obvious. I'd even keep your condition clearing potions at lower levels until your class gets a condition cure, and maybe even after, depending on its cooldown timer. I know Guardian has a pretty solid condition clear. But that's not always going to cover you, and that's why I always have a way out. Okay, or at least a good attempt at a way out. Your situational awareness is going to be just as critical as your actual class knowledge, if not more so. Keeping good track of where your emergency cooldowns are at is also very critical. I found saving my speedy boots was absolutely clutch, especially for when the Wraiths spawn. But speaking of Wraiths, that's another thing. On the Legendary servers, whenever a Wraith spawns in, there's this telltale screen flash. If you're fast enough, you can actually get out of there before it has a chance to aggro onto you, especially if you have something like Guardian's Sprint. So you should always try to be aware enough about your cooldowns so that as soon as you see that flash, you know whether you're engaging that Wraith or you're running the complete opposite direction as quickly as possible. As you level up, your class's skills will get more fleshed out, but some classes can have it easier than others. Once I had Catch a Breath and Warrior's Heart at higher levels, anytime I had those available to me, I knew I stood a good chance if I was still in decent shape morale-wise anyway. Now, obviously dying isn't the end of the world. The whole thing isn't so serious that you should be stressing over it, but it can be super annoying when you're deep into an enemy camp that you've been working through for the last 10 minutes just to bite it to a Wraith with one objective left all the way in the back of the camp, and you've got to walk back. But while leveling up, I quickly ran into the next problem after I got my feet under me. Inventory management. I am a loot goblin, after all, in every game that I play. Even with only prospecting and hanging on to my looted crafting materials, my bags and bank kept running into more and more issues. By the time I was in the 30s and 40s, my bank was pretty much always full, and my inventory was not much better. But the trick that saved my sanity was the good old classic storage alts, and it does way more than just give you space. There's a limit to how much vault space you can unlock for in-game currency on one character, but there's nothing stopping you from creating alternate characters to send items over to for more storage, which solves two problems we talked about when discussing if you want to save your crafting materials: storage and not knowing what class you want to play. Let's break it down. Now, you can go learn your crafting professions as soon as you're out of your introductory questing area and out into the wide world, usually around level 5 or so. This is also a great excuse to test out some other classes for a bit if you're unsure what class you want to play as your main. Each character gets access to their own bags as well as vault space, which you can send money from your main character over to them to upgrade that. The first few upgrades are quite cheap. So once you've gotten into your 30s, you should be able to get a few fairly easily. But how do we send these items over? There's two main ways. You can mail over the items to your character, but you do have to pay a fee based on the value of the items that you mail over to them. So this cost may start to add up on you if you do this for a really long time. But what I did, since I already had them and it makes it free and easy, is purchase the 20 shared inventory slots from the LOTRO store for LOTRO points, which you can either buy or earn in-game. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in a minute here. Now, the one downfall of this strategy, before we get to that, is that the base free-to-play accounts only have access to 2 character slots per server, meaning you wouldn't have enough characters available to cover all of the crafting professions anyway. However, if you purchase anything from the LOTRO store with real life money or subscribe to VIP membership even once, which is required for the Legendary servers only, your account will permanently go to premium status, which at the time of this recording offers 10 character slots. You earn the previously mentioned LOTRO points through deeds. For example, completing each of the starter zones' full deed logs, as well as the Lone Lands, which is one of the 20 to 35 zones, will earn you 915 LOTRO points, and you need 995 to purchase the initial 20 slots of shared storage. But I'm not encouraging you to just grind out these things. I'm just illustrating a point that if you started a few characters, played around and earned some deeds on them, as well as were playing through and completing deeds normally on your main character, before long, you'd probably find yourself sitting pretty close to or already having enough for this upgrade just by playing the game a couple different ways. If you do choose to purchase VIP membership, you get 500 LOTRO points with that per month, making it even easier for you to save up for the rest of that 995. One standalone month of VIP is $15 US, and the pack for enough LOTRO points for that is $20 US. I made 3 additional characters on top of my main character, so each character could have their own crafting professions with some overlap since there's only 10 professions, and each character can have 3. Some might say it's a little extra, but I hate wasting materials. So I organize my shared storage into different tabs. I drop recipes and materials into those tabs, and then when I'm ready, I can hop on the characters that have those crafting professions, grab them out and put them in their vault. It saves me time and money compared to the mail method, and it just makes my loot goblin soul happy. But I'm not telling you that you need to spend your hard-earned money or that you need to go grind deeds for LOTRO points. But I am going to tell you, eventually to maximize your character, you're going to need to be completing deeds anyways. Because what we haven't touched on yet in this adventure is the Virtues mechanic. And if you don't understand these, you're going to feel it a lot. You can think of Virtues as a stat boosting trait. There's 21 virtues in total, and you can equip 5 at one time. But the ones you don't equip still give you a smaller passive bonus on top of the 3 active bonuses that each virtue gives you when they're slotted in. This took me way too long to realize for some reason, and I've seen a few other people in chat over my couple months not realizing this as well. So it's absolutely worth pointing out to you. These are ranked up per character. So if you truly want to maximize your character's full potential, eventually you're going to need to buckle up and complete some deeds. As you level up, the virtues will be able to level up farther and farther as well. But I wouldn't worry about constantly trying to keep them max rank as you level up. Generally speaking, there's more virtue experience via deeds than is necessary to max them out in each expansion of content. You may burn yourself out trying to keep them all max level all the time. But even more so, each day you log in, you get 1 free Silver Hobbit gift, which also gives you some virtue experience. Plus, there's virtue experience boosters that you can get for logging in daily or from free item drops that happen every once in a while if you put a code in the LOTRO store. And you can save a bunch of deed farming for when you've got one of those boosters and make more progress for your effort. But look, these LOTRO chips are just the start. In this next video over here, I break down 9 things that I had to learn the hard way that will improve your experience in any MMO that you ever play. And it's the perfect next step after what you've just learned here.